Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Megan Hardy, the heartbeat of the Learning Support Program at Assumption Blessed Virgin Mary in West Grove, Pennsylvania. From the moment I met Megan, I knew she was a phenomenal teacher. Her fierce advocacy, boundless compassion, and tireless dedication to her students, especially those in her Learning Support Program, is transforming lives. Recently honored at the Rising Together Alliance Gala for Assumption's Learning Support Program, Megan is a true champion of inclusion. In this episode, we'll dive into her journey, her passion for Catholic education, and the impact she's making every day. Hi, Philly faithful. My name is Maria Pardini, and welcome to the Graces of Catholic Education podcast, a place where grace shapes Catholic education one future saint at a time. The mission of this podcast is to build a faith-filled place for Philly's Catholic educators to share their faith, hear innovative practices for today's challenging classrooms, and be inspired by others who are tackling this wild and blessed ride of Catholic education. Join us as we explore the grace that guides us, informing the hearts and minds of Philly's future saints. All right, Megan. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you. All right. So we're going to start how we start all things in Catholic education with a prayer. Are you good with that?
Absolutely.
All right. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the gift of Megan. Thank you for the gift of the end of the school year. Please bless us as we go through this podcast on this wonderful, beautiful, sunny afternoon here in West Grove. Bless us and send us the Holy Spirit to guide our conversations and make sure that as we do all things, we do them in your name. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. So again, thank you so much for coming. You're my second guest, which is very exciting. Sister Rachel was the guinea pig. So you don't have to be the guinea pig. But
thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. You know, you're one of my learning support teachers. So for all the listeners out there, I do all things special ed in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. So you're one of my star learning support teachers. And I feel like you and I kind of connected right away. So I think it'll be a good conversation that we'll have. But we have to start all things like we normally do in the Philly area. I know we're not really close to Philly as we are out here, but because we are in West Grove, and for some of people that might not even know where West Grove is, it's mushroom country.
It is.
Right? Kennett Square, like close to, that's like the big city, right? Okay. So anyway, but tell me, even though we're not near Philly, tell me where you're from. Where did you go to grade school? Where did you go to high school? All things like that.
Sure. So I originally am from Delaware County.
Oh, you're a Delco girl.
Oh, I lived in Ridley Park.
My gosh.
Until I was 5.
Okay. Well, that's all right. Once a Delco girl, always a Delco girl.
And then when I was 5, my family moved to West Grove.
Okay.
And so I've actually been part of this parish and school for almost 37 years.
Okay.
When we moved here, we became parishioners of Assumption BVM parish. I received my sacraments. I got married at the church. My sisters are graduates of ABVM school. I did attend first through 3rd grade here, and then went on to public school for a couple of years. And then I went to St. Mark's High School in Wilmington. From there, I went to Newman, at the time was Newman College, to get my early elementary childhood education degree. And then from there, I also went to get my master's at Newman University.
Okay. All right. So they upgraded. Yeah. They upgraded for you for your master's. Oh, that's good. So you are like a lifer here.
I am.
Yes.
This has been my home away from home. Actually, the church wasn't even built. That's up on the hill. We used to go down into the West Grove little town, and there was a little church there. So yeah, this is definitely a part of who my family is.
Yeah.
Came from a very devout Catholic family. My dad is a permanent deacon, actually, in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. He has since retired, but so this is definitely a piece of my heart is always here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when I did the trailer for this, for the podcast, one of the things that I talked about that I think is such a gift that we have here in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia is legacy, and how there's so many families whose parents went somewhere, and now even grandparents, parents, now us as parents, and then our children, and then, hopefully my grandchildren, your grandchildren will be able to attend not just Catholic school, but it's so cool to see.
Absolutely. I mean, even after I got married, we moved to Delaware. So I did move out of the area, and 4 or 5 years into Delaware, I was like, we have to move back to Chester County. And my husband loves it. So
yeah. Where is he from?
Delaware.
Okay. All right. So you didn't go too far.
No.
Okay. So before we kind of start about inclusion and stuff, what led you to become a learning support teacher?
So honestly, I always had a passion for education. Even since I was little, like just babysitting. I'm the oldest of 4. So I really took on that leadership of taking care of my younger siblings. Always wanted to babysit the kids. And as I went through and going through college, I really trying to experience different things through student teaching. So yeah, I student taught in a public school setting. I student taught in a Catholic school setting, and I also student taught in strictly a special education facility. And that was a wonderful experience. So I think as I went through my educational journey and becoming a teacher and seeing the needs of the classroom and the needs that were starting to develop, and really kind of wanting to support students in a way that was able to make them reach their highest potential. I also think becoming a mom, just not understanding that each child is different. I do have a child with ADHD and different things like that. So I had to dig myself into research to support my child. So really just seeing that support.
Yeah. So you've always been a learning support teacher? No. Okay. So you started in?
So I graduated at Newman 2006. I could not find a job. I ended up taking a job at the YMCA for the preschool summer program, which I was offered the full-time position for the summer. So I took that teaching pre-K4, which is fine because I was also in the process of planning a wedding.
Right.
At the end of that school year, an opportunity was shared with me that they were opening a second kindergarten classroom at Assumption BVM. At that point, I was like, you know what? I should just put my resume out there. I did. I got an interview, and here I am.
And the rest
years
is,
later.
I was going to say, how many years?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
18 years later.
Yeah. So I started in kindergarten. And then after that, I actually moved to 3rd grade for a couple years. And then another opportunity came for the kindergarten position opened again here. And that is my heart. I love kindergarten. So I went into kindergarten. And then about 6-7 years ago is when I took on the learning support program.
All right. And the rest is history.
Yes.
All right. So let's kind of talk about inclusion and special education. So I just want to explain to our listeners and our watchers what the Rising Together Alliance is. So the Rising Together Alliance is an organization started in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia that promotes bringing children with intellectual disabilities into our regular Catholic education classrooms and schools. And they are a driven force of nature, to put it mildly. The 3 moms who really are the driving force behind the Rising Together Alliance, in one of the talks that we will talk about in one of the speeches at their gala, I nickname them the OGs of the RTA, and they are, Mama Bear is like an understatement when it comes to those 3 women, and they have done so much to foster and promote the idea of inclusion in Catholic schools. So you actually have a student here with intellectual disabilities in Assumption BVM,
Yes.
and you were honored at the recent gala that RTA puts on every year. You were honored as the Learning Support Program of the Year.
Yes.
So what did that recognition mean to you and mean to Assumption? Like what? Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it was so humbling because we don't always know at the time if we're doing the right thing, if we're making the right choices. So it was a humbling experience. I think it also affirmed that this isn't just a career or a dedication. This is a vocation. We're here to educate the whole child, and being able to be part of that process and seeing that even though a student who may have different strengths and weaknesses, they're able to be supported in a Catholic setting if the parent chooses. So it was truly heartwarming and emotional night. I will say that our table, seeing all the different speakers and hearing the children, I knew one of them was sang a beautiful song. I know I was just very emotional to be part of that process and seeing that, yes, this is my purpose. And as you go through education and going into my 19th year of education, you start to say, like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And I think that really affirmed the purpose of what we're doing at Assumption and what I'm also doing in my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how you use the word vocation. So one of the initiatives that we're starting out of the Office of Catholic Education is a new teacher formation program in the Archdiocese. It's a pilot program this year. We're calling it Beacon Academy. Mm-hmm. But one of the biggest points that we're going to make in Beacon Academy is that teaching is really a vocation that in Catholic school. I mean, I actually really do think it's a vocation because I taught in public school too. And I do feel like I was doing God's work in public school too.
I think no matter whether you're in Catholic or public or any school setting, that is a dedication and a vocation. You're making a change in someone's life, or someone's little life. And so I think it's important but I do think it is, when we talk about a vocation, we're really living through Jesus and our Catholic faith.
Yes. Amen. I love it. All right. So I have seen firsthand how you pour your heart into your learning support students, but what really sparked your passion for working with students who have learning differences?
Thank you. That means a lot. I think just knowing that every child deserves a chance to be seen and to be heard. And I think sometimes we think that we know what's best for every child, and like also understanding about differentiation, and really making sure that those students get the support that they need. And like I said, also as becoming a mom, I've been through early intervention, I've been through diagnosis and understanding and advocating. I think advocacy is such an important part of this as well. And advocating for what the student needs, but also I feel like too, what the classroom teacher needs or what the parents need, and really working. It's a collaboration of all aspects of the team.
Yeah. And I think that that is something that the word advocacy kind of popped out. I wrote it down here because I think as learning support teachers, we really, I think all teachers advocate for their students.
Absolutely.
But I do think that we in special ed have a little bit of a different role in the advocating of the kids that are in our learning support programs. And we really do hopefully become, along with their parents and their advocates. And one of the things that I love is that we see very often, sometimes the regular ed teacher also become an advocate for those kids. And then you can sit back and you can think, hey, like I was always advocating for that student.
Absolutely. And I think too, just when we collaborate with the classroom teacher or the support staff and the principal and our parents, we are identifying those barriers that sometimes we don't realize was a barrier. And so when we collaborate and work together, and in that, when we're advocating, we realize, okay, this is what needs to be done. So what can we do differently so that child can reach that full potential and break through the barriers? And unfortunately, sometimes it can be right away, and other times it may take longer. But as long as we keep making sure those supports, the accommodations, the resources are in place for that student, they can be successful.
Yeah. And I think we'll talk later on about some of the challenges of that relationship sometimes between regular education and special education. But let's talk about Liv for a second. So one of the things that I realized is that you were one of Liv's biggest advocates from day one. Like I knew, because part of my job is helping the schools get ready for a student with intellectual disabilities. And I kind of have to go out and feel the school out. And it was never a question in my mind that you were not 100% on board with this from day one. And I do really believe that you were kind of like one of her biggest advocates, and also Danielle. But who was the principal here? So can you share how you supported her inclusion and what it's been like to see her thrive?
Absolutely. So Liv came in pre-K 3, and then she obviously went over to pre-K 4. Learning support at our school starts in kindergarten. So I really was able to dive into the the physical aspect of supporting her and working with her and creating plans and stuff and collaborating with the parents and the teachers, but really seeing her from the beginning to how she left kindergarten. It's truly been a blessing. All our students are a blessing and a gift. But really supporting Liv in the classroom, pushing in. This year, I really tried to support her in the academics, but also the social emotional, the communication, making sure that her aid was also, we were collaborated a lot of times and made communication, making sure that the strategies that we had in place are being done consistently, because in order for growth, consistency needs to be done. And it really was a team approach. But when I went into the classroom, she really just engaged, and seeing her make the eye contact and her wanting to participate. And even though, yes, things she needed guidance for, hand over hand for some things and help getting out of her chair, she really, by the end of school year, was just an independent student in the kindergarten classroom. I mean, I think the last week of school, she was handing out papers by reading the names on the and handing them to the student. And so the teacher and I were very emotional throughout the school year, but seeing where she ended the school year was truly a blessing for all of us involved. And I think she loved the interaction. She loved the song. So anytime I came in, it was first, we have to do your work, then we can dance and sing. But it truly is, again, a humbling experience and a privilege to be a part of Liv and Liv's family.
Yeah. And well, they're blessed to have you. So we talked about community and support and stuff. So, you and Danielle, the principal here at Assumption, have really built a culture of inclusion. I really do believe that because I see it firsthand. I'm here frequently, all the way down Route 1, driving all the way down. But I do get to see my mom when I come here.
Beautiful ride.
Yes, it is a very nice ride. But how important is a supportive principal to the process of inclusion?
It is vital. And I think that Danielle does a great job. She's an amazing leadership, amazing principal, and really understands the needs of students. We do work very closely in speaking about learning support, but also making sure that all our students are getting the support that they need, or if a teacher has a concern, we have a meeting, we have a team meeting, we walk through the SST process, and we work with families. So we definitely have I think we have the highest level of communication and implementing supports and accommodations immediately. And I think we both see the purpose of Catholic school inclusion, and we really just truly have that passion for what is needed in our Catholic schools.
Yeah. And that's why you were the Learning Support Program of the Year. I mean, it's not just a one-stop shop, and it's not just a one person, it definitely is a team. And I can't say enough about Danielle myself, working with her also. She's a joy to work with. And
she really is. And I think our school is where we are today because of her leadership, and it's a family. It's a family environment. And I think from being a faculty and all the way down to the parents and the students, they feel that when you walk in this building, it is a family-like environment. And I think that really starts from this top up.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. So that I also know, well, you are our actual first learning support teacher on the podcast. So tell me what makes your role unique in a Catholic school. And this might be a little difficult for you to answer because you never worked in a public school as a learning support teacher, right?
I didn't. I've never worked in a public school other than student teaching.
Yeah. But what do you think some of the challenges that you face just being a learning support teacher in a Catholic school? What are some of the challenges that you face?
I think the hardest part sometimes is truly the resources. We are a very small school. We do support students at the highest level. I sit in many meetings with districts, other private schools, or even private providers. And a lot of times the plans that we have in place is what the district would be offering.
Sometimes better too, yes, actually, more. Really.
And, unfortunately, yes, we don't have the PT, we don't have the OT, we don't have those kinds of services. But we really are upfront with the families and making sure this is what we can provide. And we really want to make sure that we are thorough and make sure that our students, and not even our students, but incoming, that we can support them and that we are very honest in saying, this is what we want to make this work, and I think it is not the easiest conversation. And it hasn't happened very often, but it is one of the hardest conversations to tell a parent that, this is what we can offer. We can't match what. And so I do think that's the hardest. And I think sometimes I'm always like, well, let's find a way.
Yeah.
Can we do this? I'll stay after school and, but I think the reality is we want to be honest with the parents that we just don't accept a child because we want an enrollment. We're accepting a child because we know that they deserve a Catholic education. So we want to work with the parent and making sure. But like I said, many of our students are achieving and they're hitting their goals, and and again, it's the team approach. It's not just learning support, classroom teacher, but it's all of us working together, including the parents. And I think they're the first teachers. So we really want to make sure that they are supported as well.
Yes. And that goes right back to, Catholic social teaching, that parents really are the first teachers of their children. And it is a gift when they bring them to Catholic school. And, those parents are making an investment in their child's future. And very often, even if the actual physical resources don't add up on paper, I do believe that our parents choose us more often than not because of all of the other things that we offer. And, I always say Jesus is the best resource that we have, and he's free.
Yeah.
So,
no, and it's definitely, we do. I mean, I think it's also a mindset. I think that understanding that we don't know any of our students' progress or potential, whether, and I think it's just giving them a chance, showing the parents that they have this opportunity. But I do think the hardest part is just also being one learning support teacher from K to 8. I have to walk into a kindergarten class, which I'm on the carpet playing with manipulatives. And then I go into an 8th grade literature class. So I think too, that managing that curriculum and the expectations, and yes, like what's happening in kindergarten is not going to be the same expectation that's happening in an 8th grade class.
Right. Even sometimes the behaviors are sometimes similar though, right? So an 8th grader sometimes act like they're kindergarten.
So it's balancing that and understanding that, I don't want to make decisions that's going to make it easier for the student, but I also want to make a decision that's going to support them and able for them to reach their goal.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on a lot of things there. I mean, we could talk about this all day long, but the one last thing I want to touch on though is sometimes, unfortunately, inclusion can be we face resistance or uncertainty in those situations. So have you encountered challenges in advocating for your students, and how do you address that?
I think a lot of it does come from misconceptions or not fully understanding. And I'm still learning. There are aspects of learning support or students, speech and language. That is not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn it. Different thing, OT, obviously. So I do understand that if you have a student and you see this paperwork so you're not understanding the specific needs or how the best way to approach it. So I think, again, I keep saying that collaboration, but I think speaking, sharing the student reports and different things like that, and just really working together and strategizing and saying, I'm going to be here to help you too. It's not just on the classroom teacher or just on me. We have to work together. And we have a great team of teachers that really work together, and we can, care about our students and really kind of just say, what can we do? What more can we do if something's not working? But I do think sometimes the inclusion, even in outside of the building and society of inclusion, like why parents choose to send their child to a Catholic school when they could be in a public school receiving so many more. But I think at the end, it's, again, we educate the whole child and that family environment, and talking with families and saying they just want their child to be seen. They want their child to be heard. They want their child to be loved. And not that they're not loved, but it's a much smaller atmosphere. And so their child that may not be able to maybe communicate or do something they're able to be supported.
Yeah. All right. So let's try and switch gears a little bit, and let's talk about, the reason that we are Catholic education, and that has to do with our faith. And Catholic education is rooted in our faith. So tell me about how your personal faith guides your approach to teaching and advocating for your students.
So my faith is in everything I do, as a mom, as a wife, as a teacher, just in general. I think I see Jesus in all our students, in everyone we interact with. We often say that, or even to our little ones, I've said it to the older ones too, but Jesus is in your heart. So I really look at Jesus, the child, and saying that this is a purpose, and reaching that child, just as Jesus would embrace.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how you talk about Jesus there. I heard a quote. I don't know. I was doing some reading, and it was, I think I'll probably butcher the quote, but it was something like, we've never looked into the eyes of someone that Jesus doesn't love. And the fact that we can sit and talk about this all day long with our students, in our faculty rooms, in our parent-teacher conferences, I think that is the resource. That is the thing that makes the difference within Catholic education.
Absolutely. I think when these students walk into the room or into the building in the morning, we are beginning with morning prayer. We're beginning lunch with prayer. We're ending lunch with prayer. We're ending school with prayer. And I really think even conversational, having, if there's a social conflict, or if there's a behavioral, like a discipline that we talk about our faith, and like we use our faith as the guiding light of who we are. And this is why we're in the building. And, I often say, like, Jesus is in your heart. So would you treat Jesus like that? Or what would you do? So I really see the children as, the reason why we are here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
To show the world.
So one of the things that I know is going to come out in this podcast when people view it is how conscientious of a student, or how conscientious of a teacher you are. I see it all the time. Your attention to detail is unmatched. I need some of your attention to detail. And your personality shines through so much in your work. But how do you balance that emotional investment in your students with the demands of teaching?
Yeah. Thank you for all the kind words.
They're easy.
I do think I am naturally an emotional person. It's just who I am. And I do what I do. I feel like I've been that way my whole life. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do 110%. I do get emotionally attached and emotionally involved. And I do try to take a step back from that. But at the end of the day, like, what I do it's part of me. And you can't, I've tried to, seeing kids that struggle, or we've been in meetings, and not just me. There's unfortunately, there are times where we're in a meeting with a parent and the parent is emotional. We all just cry with the parent. And I think, and it's hard because you don't want the parent to see a professional upset. But I think sometimes those tears are comforting to the parent. And I think that emotional regulation of understanding, like taking that deep breath and saying, I need to do this for the child, no matter if it's hard, I'm going to continue to advocate and to work with them. But I do think that emotional of taking, personal care, making sure that I do disconnect at times, and taking that rest, and even going home from school to be a mom, it's definitely a balance.
Yeah. I like how you kind of talked about the tears. And I do believe, I just cried with a mom a couple of weeks ago. And I believe that parents are comforted when they know someone loves their child, not as much as they do, but as much as they possibly can. Yeah, I think that's a comfort to a parent. I really do.
I agree. And I think we have
No, I'm not saying we should be crying at every meeting.
No, absolutely. And I think there is circumstances where, I think it is hard as a parent to hear, and we try so hard to share the positives, because there are positives, but sometimes that when you hear something that your child's struggling and you're seeing it at home, and you just feel like, am I doing the right thing? And so, but it is emotional for us to see that aspect. But I think the strong network that we have, the team, like, I know I can go and talk to a teacher and say, like, have that conversation, or I'm really worried about this student. And the same thing goes with Danielle. Her office is always open. And just really saying, like, and there have been moments I've gone in there and just like, I need a moment and just cry. And then you're like, okay, I can pull myself together and I have to go support this student now. But you really just want to see you're not only successful, because we don't know, to me, I don't know what that child's success may look like, but I think making sure that they are making that progress and just feeling that they're like every other student, and they're, and making sure that, that they're heard.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talk to me about the mission of Assumption, and how does that support inclusion, and what does that look like in everyday reality?
Sure. So Assumption's mission, it exists to foster a community of faith. So really every day we're showing our students the faith and how we are to live through Jesus. Academic excellence by promoting Jesus's teaching. So we are supporting our students in the academics, no matter their need. So your higher level learner is getting challenged, and your student with a disability, a learning disability, or, some kind of documentation is getting supported in that area. And then celebrating individual student strengths. And I think that to me is not the most important, but I think that's so vital, because we need to celebrate the littlest things, because in order for students to feel supported, or even for families, we're going to embrace that. And so, in the lower grades, it may be that they read, 3 words in their book, and like, we praise that. Or it might be that, a student got a 80 on their test because they were not doing well. So it could be anything, but praising, and I make sure just share that with the students. My older kids, I definitely have a more relationship with them as far as communication. But if my little ones, I do make sure I send an email, or just say, we had a really good learning support lesson today. They were engaged. They were happy. So I feel like the mission definitely of inclusion, of including and creating a safe, faith-based environment in our classrooms.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to other Catholic communities or educators who are looking to create a more inclusive environment? Like, what would you say to them?
I would really say, and again, I keep using the word, but to advocate and really understanding the student needs and understanding what is needed. And, we don't need a lot of materials, or, I take a lot of the teacher's curriculum or teacher's lesson plans, and I'm able to adapt them or accommodate them. So really working closely with the teachers and making sure you do have that open communication, because I need to know what is happening before I walk into that classroom. Obviously, it doesn't always happen that way. Things come up and different things happen. But I really think the advocacy, communication, and really just trusting that what you know as a teacher, and obviously your faith, and saying, God's going to get me through. God's going to give me some kind of answer.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. One of the biggest pieces of advice that Sister Rachel gave on the podcast was, turn it over to God. And, yeah, I mean, I think that we could all use that piece of advice. Sometimes you just have to turn it over.
You do. And I think I've learned that I can't control everything.
Really? You've learned that?
I'm trying. And that goes back to the emotional aspect too. Yeah. But I think too, like, I realize that I can only do so much in one day. And so also understanding, like, if it doesn't work the first time, it doesn't mean that you are not working to your full potential as a teacher. But also knowing, okay, like, let's strategize and work together. So I know if something is not working, I can go to another teacher and say, like, what strategy do you have? And I do, like I said, I know I'm still learning support. I'm still researching. I'm still taking, I love taking classes online. I love doing all that stuff, but there are things that are out of my wheelhouse, and I'm okay going to our CCIU speech and language therapist and saying, okay, what does this word mean? And like, what does this mean? Or the math specialist. I am not a math person. So I'm not afraid to say I don't know. And so really just don't be vulnerable. Be vulnerable, and just be willing to say, I don't know what to do. And it's okay, because someone out there in the building is going to know. And that would be my.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I always say it's always really important. I hear a lot of concern from teachers. You know, I get called in usually when there's a problem. So it's kind of like I'm always hearing what the stressors are. Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the very first things I always say to them, and I talked about this in my trailer, is you got to be able to let God's grace in. Like, God is guiding this ship, mm-hmm. and we have to just take a breath sometimes and let his grace, you know, his grace is the gift that he gives us to help us do our jobs.
Absolutely.
And that is, it's hard a lot. It's really hard for teachers.
I think too, it can be overwhelming, mm-hmm. because you don't have just that one student that may have a learning disability and has a plan, but they also have, you know, 20 plus some other students. So I do think it gets overwhelming. Like, how am I going to reach this student, and how am I going to reach the one that's already reading, you know? And so it is hard. And I totally understand. I often say to teachers, like, I get snapshots of a student's day. Like, I only spend 30, 60 minutes with some students. And some students I don't see every day. So it is hard when I walk into a classroom and that, you know, I don't know what's happened before that I walked in. So right. I try to read the room. I try to see the teacher. Okay, what can I do to help you? But also to let the teacher know, like, my big thing is, like, if the learning support students are struggling with one aspect of learning, let's see, maybe it can benefit everyone else. So really you don't have to do 15 different lessons, just making sure. And I think understanding that we're not going to challenge those higher level learners, but I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So what do you think that let's kind of talk about the nitty gritty of learning support, because you are my learning support person. So it's nice to actually, I always say, sometimes it's nice to be able to speak the same language, mm-hmm. as some, you know, I think sometimes in regular ed and special ed, there's a different language that mm-hmm. is spoken. And so it's nice to have somebody on my show that speaks the same special education language that I do. But, like, what's a common misconception about learning support that you would like to challenge or redefine?
Yeah, I think the one that I think that I've experienced the most, especially in the beginning of working in learning support, is that we're lowering the bar for students. And I think that's I hear that all the time, not mm-hmm. just in society as well, as we're, you know, teaching students. And the goal is never to make school, I don't want to say easy. That's not the goal of learning support. But the goal is to accommodate for that student to reach the curriculum. And so it's not making it easier for them. It's changing the way in which it's presented, mm-hmm. and it's making it them successful. So I think even if we, you know, decrease spelling words, or we are giving copies of notes, and I'm just using these as an example, those students are still going to learn how to write notes. We're going to do baby steps. So let's start here, and then we'll gradually start asking them to, you know, we're going to scaffold. Mm-hmm. And so really making sure, like, those accommodations are not going to always stay in place. So really that's kind of where we can have a conversation. And it's great when I look at an A plan and the teachers are like, this child doesn't need this anymore. Like, they're able to take that test independently. They don't need me to read. I'm like, great. Because our goal is them to become independent learners. Mm-hmm. And as they go up into the middle school, and then as we transition them to high school. So that's kind of where I think it is hard. And I think I can understand it. Being a classroom teacher, I can understand that mm-hmm. mindset of, well, you're reading a test to a child. Of course, they're going to get all the answers right. But I also say those parents know that test is being read to them. Mm-hmm. So if they're getting hundreds on the test, they're getting what they need. And you're right, then maybe let's change the structure of the test. What can we do to challenge that child as well? We don't always want our children to get straight A's and hundreds. So yeah, that's kind of where I feel like we're not lowering the bar. We're really just truly, we're meeting them where they are and where they deserve.
Yeah.
And
I always say we're leveling the playing field.
Yeah.
When we make accommodations, and there's a difference between accommodations and modifications, but the accommodations are really to just level the playing field. It's just to make it so that everybody has the opportunity to achieve to their level of success. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how do we talked about this, but how do you really nitty gritty way collaborate with general education teachers to make sure that your students are like fully integrated into academic, social, and spiritual life of the school?
So specifically we'll start at the end of the school year because we just ended.
Thank God you got there.
At the end of the year, I meet with each current teacher and then the next teacher. And so sometimes
Are they in the meeting together?
Yes.
Okay.
And so unfortunately one teacher has to be in there multiple times. And as we get to the middle school, it's bigger. But so we really do meet as a team and we really share the gifts, the strengths, the strategies, and not even just our students that have A plans or have accommodations, but it's all our students. So we sit through and say, okay, and sometimes it's like this student needs to be challenged. The student, I'm kind of concerned about this student but they're doing well, but let's keep an eye on it. So we really have that end of the year conversation going into the next year. And then all plans are shared with teachers ahead of time. Obviously they do change throughout the summer. And then in the beginning of the school year, we do try to meet again and just really kind of usually around like October, because the beginning of the school year is just,
And they need a chance to get to know those students that are sitting in front of them.
Yeah. And some teachers will ask, or, can you meet with me after school? I want to kind of go through this A plan. And what does this look like? Sometimes if we put accommodation in, and how did that work last year? Or what can I have an idea? And so I want to hear, I always say like, this is a collaborative document and I want them to be part of that process. And what one accommodation worked in one class may need to be changed for a following. So we do just kind of make sure that we meet and we're collaborating, we're sharing the documents. I love when I'm invited to a parent meeting. Usually a teacher will say, oh, I'm meeting with so-and-so, are you able to be there? I think that's key. I do try to attend conferences with learning support parents if the schedule is always so busy.
Right.
But yeah, I just think that open communication, I copy every teacher on an email that I'm sending to a parent, or I'm telling the teacher that I'm reaching out. If a parent reaches out to me, I never respond to the parent without reaching out to the teacher first.
That's
just
awesome.
because I want them to have that level of respect. And like I want the parents to know too, like this is a team approach. So sometimes it is, just so you know, and I'll share the email or I'll share a conversation. And I think that has really helped the teachers build that trust with me as a learning support teacher and know that I'm not we're in a team. I'm not going to, we're working. I want the parents to know that too.
Yeah. You mentioned trust, you mentioned parents too. So I want to talk about both of those things, but I think the trust is a really big thing. I was a learning support teacher for, years and years and years. And it's different for learning support teachers because they have to go into all these, they have to go into kindergarten, they have to go into third grade, they have to go into eighth grade, they go to all these different classrooms. And teachers don't want to let people into their classroom that they don't trust. So the trust is a really big thing. When the teachers don't trust you, your job becomes exponentially harder, virtually almost impossible, I think. So I think that that's a fine line that learning support teachers need to learn how to walk that line and show those regular ed teachers that they are trusting, because a lot of times in Catholic education, it's been very like isolating. Sometimes there's only one class of each grade here. Is that right?
Yes.
One class of each grade. Yeah. So you have one third grade, one fourth grade. So there's only one third grade teacher. There's only one person teaching third grade.
Right.
So when they had to kind of open their doors to inclusion and to having other people in their room. That's a big adjustment.
It is. And I have to say, I've been so blessed that I'm actually, they like, when are you coming in? Can you come in? And I do remember being that classroom teacher and knowing, okay, it is in the beginning, especially when you're a new teacher too. Like, I'm not in here to observe. I'm here to work with you and collaborate and work together to educate this child. So what can I do? And I love that, I can go in and not, sometimes it's, they have a special event or they're doing a special project. And I love seeing that and being part of that. So how can I help you? And so like I said, I'm very blessed that, some teachers were like, can you be in here every day, all day? And I wish I could. But I think I can understand sometimes it is kind of, it's their home. Their classroom is their home, and their students are part of their family, and they're opening their classroom to me. And I appreciate that.
And they're vulnerable. Like they have to be vulnerable in order to have somebody in there. So it's really good. So, I don't know if anybody noticed, but it's 11:15. You probably don't even notice this, but every day at 11:15, my alarm goes off in AM and PM, and a group of prayer warriors that I am a part of. This is the first time it's happened on the podcast.
Look at that.
Pray to Father Atkinson for Lily Walker, who is a young, how old is Lily now? Maybe 19 or 20. She was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. So we are praying to Father Atkinson for Lily's miracle. So I won't say the whole Father Atkinson prayer, but we will just say, Father Atkinson, pray for us. And then we can kind of go about our podcast. So thank you for allowing
Absolutely.
that. So let's talk about parents, because we touched on parents. And again, in Catholic education, parents are an integral part of this. So they're key partners, especially when their child has some type of a learning difference. So how do you work with families to ensure that those needs are being met and that they're all feel like they're a part of the team too?
Absolutely. I think that is such the key, is to have that parent or parents they're part of the team and letting them know we hear their concern. Because sometimes it's not always a positive. They're advocates as well for their kids. We have I will say, our parents are so supportive and they truly love Assumption. And I think just making sure, like, if I get, send an email and say, oh, can I talk to you? I have a concern. I will make sure, like, again, I'm going to follow up with the classroom teacher first and then kind of talk to them. But I think, again, you need to hear their concern. One thing, if there's a question, it's hard not to take it personally or to get defensive sometimes, because you're like, but I'm doing that. And so really, I just try to hear their concern and just speak the facts and saying, this is what we're doing. What else, we can look, what else could we do? But it's their baby, whether they're kindergarten or 8th grade, it's their child. And they have that, I always say, they have that right to ask and to work with us, and really meeting with families. It's, like I said, at conference time, I do meet with parents. It's very rare that we'll get a meeting for an A-plan student unless there is a concern or like an update. But our SST process, we meet with parents monthly because we are tracking specific goals and specific things to determine if further. And that has really worked for our school. And those students that parents have said, like, they're just struggling at home, they're struggling at school. We love when we see it on both sides, because we're like, okay, something is definitely, let's figure this out. And so when we push them recommendation out for district testing or something like that, the parents are very grateful. And, some of them don't know the process. Some of them don't know the resources. And
I think the process that sometimes public education is set up is to not be very user-friendly.
Yeah.
It's not user-friendly.
And some of them, they hear that SST process and they all immediately, I want my child to remain at Assumption. And we really make that clear communication that we're not saying that your child can't be supported here. This is just going to help us better support your child and educate, because there might be something we're missing, because we may not always have, obviously we're not diagnosing or testing students. So really making sure that parents feel comfortable with their child's progress. They have their documentations. We work very closely with great partnership with our local districts.
That's so beneficial. Yeah.
It's been great. And so really working with the families, and again, and just including them as in the team. And I really do appreciate, teachers will copy me on emails as well. And I think that's another key to letting the parents know, like, the team approach.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, it's human nature sometimes to kind of like play one side against the other. Kids do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've seen kids do it in learning support. And sometimes, parents are human too. And sometimes parents are like, oh, well, I didn't like the answer this one gave. Maybe I can get a different answer out of that
and
one.
I think sometimes it's perspective too. Like, the child's coming home saying something and it's, or Mrs. Tardy didn't come in my classroom for 3 days, but I've been absent because I had sick kids home sick. So I think it's just that level of communication and making sure that they understand what is happening in the classroom. But I also think we share the positives. I think sometimes that is the hardest part sometimes because we're so focused, we're so busy trying to get everything,
all their needs met.
Right. And so I really make sure that, like I said earlier, like the smallest things we share. I try to send parents an email. I try to, tell the child how proud I am of them. And I do think that goes a long way sometimes. And just letting the parents know, like, this is where they are. This is what they did. I want the older kids to share their grades with their parents. I'm not big on the grades, but when a student comes to me and said that they got a certain grade that they're so happy about, I'm like, tell your parents.
Yeah.
Tell your parents. And then I follow up and say, because I want them to hear it from them. But I do think it's important that we hear the positives and the negatives. So.
Yeah. So tell me the last kind of nitty gritty question here is I want to ask before we get into some more, I'm going to put you in the holy hot seat.
Oh, no.
Is how do you measure success for your students and what does really thriving look like in your program here at Assumption?
Good. So really, again, educating the whole child. And it is definitely every child, even in the classroom, every child has different strengths and needs. So really looking at the deficits of the student. So if it's, a student has a comprehension, we're making sure we're tracking that comprehension. We're not really, I will look at the grades. I will look at their assessments, but really I want to see application, the application of the skill. Is the child able to independently, even if they're listening to the story, are they able to tell me what happened in the beginning, middle, and ends? And really the teachers do a great job of making sure that those records, those running records, we do some benchmarking in K through second grade with the help of the CCIU reading support teacher. And so, just making sure that there's progress. And so it is hard because, we want, if you have a reading disability and we want to close that gap and we don't know when that gap or if that gap will ever completely close, but we want to make sure that there is progress. So if we have a student who, is in second grade on a first grade reading level and they're moving up to second, that to me is like, okay, what we've done is we're making that progress. So as they transition to third grade, we want to make sure that that gap doesn't get wider. It continues to close. So I really just think, and those accommodations that they're getting daily really support that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So I want to give you I wanted us to delve into, what makes you tick outside of Assumption. So you mentioned that you're a mom and a wife. So kind of tell me like who you're a mom to, who you're a wife to.
Okay. So my husband, Nick and I have been married for 18 years. We went to high school together.
Oh, you're high school sweethearts.
So
I love that.
St. Mark's together. I am a mom of 3. My oldest is turning 16 next week.
So we're driving. We're going to drive soon.
Yes.
God bless.
It's very scary.
Our Lady of the Highway. Pray for us.
I have a son who's will be 14. And then Addie is my baby and she's 11. All my kids have are either graduated or are at Assumption. And so as a parent, I always say, like, I can always say amazing things as a teacher, but until you're a parent, it's the honest truth. Like, I couldn't imagine my kids being anywhere else. They're thriving. They're just doing really well. And it's a blessing that my kids get this gift of Catholic education.
I love that. Now, is it hard to be a parent in a school where you work?
So It's gotten easier.
Okay.
So at the time of my youngest, who now is turning 16, I was a kindergarten teacher when she was in kindergarten. So I did send her to the public school because I didn't want to teach her. And then, so the same thing happened to my son as well. So once they came in for first grade, I try to, it's hard because you see them in the hallway and you just want to love on them. But we do have boundaries. Like I'm Mrs. Hardy in the classroom. It's hard sometimes when you see things, especially as they get into the older grades, you're seeing social things or you're seeing behaviors that are going to get them in trouble because my son has ended up in the principal's office and age appropriate stuff. But I have to remove myself because I also have to say, I am here as a professional. I'm here in the building as Mrs. Hardy, the learning support teacher, and I have to trust, and I do trust that if interventions needed by the parent, I will be shared. But it is hard when you're kind of just like, I'm going to step away. I can't get involved. And
how is it with other parents too? Like sometimes, small schools, small communities, I know how the Delco is not that different. So, how does that work?
It's like I said, in the beginning, it was definitely awkward at like birthday parties. For the very beginning, I didn't go to social events. My poor husband had to, and not for anything, but to me, it was awkward. I didn't want to be put in a situation and I didn't want to be, say something wrong or
right.
I really wanted to be professional, but as, we really do have a great community of families and parents. And as my kids have gotten older and developed relationships and the social aspect, it's definitely, it's been better. And I love being a parent.
Yeah. Well, you get all the kid gossip too. You get the kid dirt. That's always nice to kind of like be in the know. Yeah. Okay. So like, what do you do in your free time when you're not momming and you're not teaching and you're not wifing? Like what do you do? What's your free time look like?
So I love to read. I love to go on walks. I was running for a little bit, but then I sprained my ankle. So that's taken off. But I did start just running again since, this week actually.
What book are you currently reading?
I'm not reading a book yet.
Oh, because we just started.
Right? I'm trying to find a good book. I'm like into the crime kind of stuff.
Oh,
like,
true crime.
Yeah.
Okay. Gosh, it's dark, Megan. Yeah, that's dark for you.
But yeah, I just kind of, I also just love being home and on my couch and just watching my kids play. And
any vacations this summer? Like
just going to the beach.
Just going. Where's the beach out here in West Grove?
So
what's the
Ocean City, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So that's the shore. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. All right. So are you ready for the Holy Hot Seat?
Oh no. Yes.
All right. So the Holy Hot Seat is just like a couple questions, rapid fire. Don't think a lot about them. Don't look at your notes. Just kind of, go with it. All right. I wish I could speak. Favorite saint to pray to?
Saint Mother Teresa.
Oh, I love it. Okay. All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Okay. One classroom supply you can't live without?
Ooh, that's a hard one. My calendar.
Oh, all right. Is it on the phone? Is it on a computer?
It's both.
Oh, it's both.
I have
so your paper.
I need a paper and I have my phone. Yeah.
Okay. If you could teach any subject besides being like a learning support teacher, what subject would it be?
I would love to teach college.
Really?
Students to become a teacher.
Oh my gosh, you would be so good at that.
Or being a...
Well, so why are we not making this happen? Your kids are young.
Yes.
Yeah, you still have babies.
Yeah.
Not babies, but yeah. The older we get, the babies get older.
Yeah, that would be like just... And again, I would love to just work with the younger generation of becoming teachers and seeing and working with them. The other thing I would love to be like a consultant education, like an advocate.
Yeah. Well, you are an advocate and it would be great if you could expand that because, like I've said, one of the things that has stood out with me for the entire time that I've met you is how hard you advocate for your students. So
thank you.
You're doing a good job of that. All right. Favorite Catholic church song?
On Eagle's Wings.
Oh,
right?
Early bird or a night owl?
Definitely not an early bird, but I'm not a night owl either. Like I go to bed before my kids now. I used to stay up late, all the things, even on a Friday night, I'm in bed by 9. So kind of, yeah.
All right. Favorite Catholic school tradition at Assumption BVM?
I love that we have prayer partners.
All right. Did you have prayer partners what was your favorite one when you were here?
I don't remember. I know we probably did.
Yeah. Okay.
But I just know experiencing it with my kids and how much they truly loved just knowing that there was going to be someone an older next to them. And they really do, even when I was a kindergarten teacher, so kindergarten and 8th grade,
okay,
our prayer partners, and these 8th graders who, are age appropriate, being, boys and girls, but seeing them mentor these little kids, they really do develop that, and they remember. I know my kids remember. And so that's, I think, a tradition that has been, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I love that too. It's nice to see sometimes those kindergartners will come to 8th grade graduation to see their prayer partner graduate. And I love that.
It's so sweet.
Yeah, it goes back to that legacy that we have at in Catholic schools. Okay. Funniest or most heartwarming thing a student has said to you?
Actually, just recently, a student told me that I was like a second mom to them.
Aww.
And, this child I'd supported for quite a long time. But I think just knowing that there's that connection and that you don't realize, to me, I was just a teacher.
Yeah.
But knowing, and I actually teased the mom, and the mom's like, you can have her.
Yeah. There's a lot of times I would like to get my kid away to a really good teacher. So who was your favorite teacher in school?
I will say I loved my teachers here. And I'm not just saying that because I also worked with them for many years since they are retired, but one still comes back and subs. But I do remember my 4th grade teacher, and it was a male teacher. And I was so nervous because I had never had a male teacher. I mean, that was unusual, really. In the 80s, 90s, late.
Don't date 90s. Yourself. It's okay. A while ago.
But he would give up his lunch every day to come play kickball with us in the field. And then he also did, every Thursday, he did like a roller skating club in the cafeteria. And that really stuck to me because I think that's so important as an educator to just build that connection and to be, again, vulnerable. And I don't know where he is now, but I do think about him often. But I've had so many.
Do you want to say his name? Maybe he will be listening.
Maybe.
You never know. You never know what happens when you put something on the internet.
That's true. So his name was Mr. Senecal.
Okay. Mr. Senecal, if you're out there, Megan Hardy would like to reconnect with you.
But I've had so many amazing teachers even through high school and college, and just really, I still connect with some people. So it's such a gift.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Favorite children's book?
Charlotte's Web.
Favorite line out of that? Do you have a favorite line?
No, I just love it. I just remember reading it multiple times growing up, and
Okay. Favorite religious holiday?
Christmas.
How come? Like, what's the?
I just love the coziness, the colors, the faith behind it, and if I could get away from spending all the money on my kids' gifts, but I love that time of just rejoicing and joy, and
yeah. Okay. And the last one, because this is a Philly podcast, favorite cheesesteak place. Do you have a favorite cheesesteak place?
It's been a while.
See, because you live all the way out here.
I know.
You're out here in the sticks.
When I went to Newman, we would go to Philly a little bit, but I guess Geno's.
Okay.
I don't even know if they're still.
They're still there. Yes, they are. Yes, they're still there. They'll be happy to know they got a plug on the podcast. All right. So we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to ask you our favorite question. And actually what's funny is that this was your favorite question of all the questions that we had talked about that we might speak of today. If you could whisper one piece of advice to every Catholic educator before they step into their classroom each day that would help them shape future saints, what would it be?
That you're not just teaching lessons or curriculum, but you are shaping a child or their soul. You're shaping them. You're preparing them for a lifelong journey. And I think when a student has a good experience in a classroom and they develop that love for learning. So yeah, just see them as a student, as a child of God. And the biggest thing is build the connection with them. Mm-hmm. Know your students, know what, not even academic needs, but know them. So I always say, like, no, what do they do on the weekends? Are they go out ice skating, or if they're the ice skater, are they a gymnast? Just so you can have that, how was your tournament? How was your softball tournament from over the weekend? I think just those little moments can really build a child.
Yeah. Well, Megan, thank you so much for sharing your work, your mission, your vocation, your passion. It is emanating from you how much you love your job and how good you are at your job. And you're setting a standard for all learning support teachers. I'm going to tap you as a mentor. I'm starting something new this year with, I'm going to find out who all the new learning support teachers are in the Archdiocese. And then I'm going to pair them with a teacher leader that is. So you're going to be tapped for that. And I hope that you'll say yes.
Absolutely. I'm so appreciative and humbled by this whole process and just interactions and working with you. So
yeah,
thank you.
Well, it's awesome. I love it too. So, to our listeners out there, if Megan's story has inspired you, please subscribe to the podcast, share this episode, and join us next time as we lean into God's grace and celebrate more educators who are making Catholic schools a place where every child belongs. So we end with a very short little prayer. To all our faithful listeners, may God's grace fill you with the courage to stay faithful, to stay fearless, and as always, stay Philly. God bless, and we'll see you on the next podcast.